Younger son Michael is 27 and his sister is 24.
She's the bride.
Yes, yes.
Where does she live?
She lives in Kendall.
Oh, that's nice.
But she's not going to stay here long. They're moving away.
Where are they moving to? Do they know?
Peru.
Peru? He's from Peru, the boy?
They used to live in Peru. He was 3 years old when they moved to the States, but for financial reasons. So it's a painful thing for me, very painful.
Yeah. It was nice that they were close.
Yes, it was very nice, very, very nice. Am I on already?
No, we're just doing the voice check,
Which
so we
is-
can talk
yes,
back and
yes,
forth.
yes.
You'll know when you're on when I don't answer.
Oh.
Today is January 15th, 1996. The survivor is Lily Pollak, Lily Pollak. Maiden name Markovits, Markovits. The interviewer is Gloria May, Gloria May. We're in Hollywood, Florida, USA. The language is English. This is tape 1. My name is Gloria May. Today is January 15th, 1996. I'm here to interview Lily Pollak. We're in Hollywood, Florida, the United States, and the language is English. Thank you very much for being with us. We'll begin if you can please tell me your full name.
Lily Pollak.
Can you spell that for me, please?
Lilypollak.
And what name were you born?
Lenke Markovits. Lenkemarkovits.
What is your birth date?
March 4th, 1914.
You're how old now?
I am 81, will be 82 in a month.
Where were you born?
I was born in Hungary, at Perjes, which turned after the First World War in 1914 to Czechoslovakia, and it was called Prešov.
How long did you stay there?
I was 9 years old when we moved to Vienna, Austria.
What were your parents' names?
My father's name was Levi, and my mother's name was Regina.
Did you have any brothers and sisters?
Yes, I have an older sister. Her name was Sherry, and my brother's name was, in Hungarian, Jenő, but then in German we called him Eugene.
How did your father make his living?
My father was in business with his brothers in Hungary, which was a different part where I was born, and they were in business leather and old iron.
Why did you leave Czechoslovakia?
You mean why did we leave Hungary?
Mm-hmm.
My aunt, my mother's, there were 3 sisters, they were always together, and my youngest aunt got married in 1918, and her husband was a Viennese, and my grandfather got a little bit setback in his business. He was in the fur business, so they decided they would move to Vienna with my grandfather and the 3 sisters. And that's where we lived, and that's where I grew up.
Do you remember from the time when you were in Hungary what your life was like before you moved? Can you tell me a little bit about it?
Yes, it was a small town, and a lot of relatives, uncles, aunts, family from my grandfather. Everybody lived close by together, and it was just a family life. Everybody was together.
Did you go to school there?
I just came of age, and I had to go to Czechoslovakian school, and I could never learn the language. When we came to Vienna, it was a relief for me, because German I picked up much faster.
What language did you speak in the home?
Hungarian.
Any other particular memories from that early time?
Yes, I have a lot of memories during the war. I was born in 14, so around 16, 17, when the war was pretty much close, coming to a close, the prisoners escaping from jail, and we were out. My mother hid us somewhere that we shouldn't be caught by them. And then I remember when I must have been about 4 years old, when it turned over from Hungary to Czechoslovakia, and we all had to go to the city hall. And I remember it as if it was today. It was a big park with a big gate, and as I was the youngest, my mother held me on my arm, and all of a sudden shooting broke out, and she took my arm and threw me over the gate into the grass and told me to wait until she picked me up, and I lay there until she picked me up when it got quiet. A lot of memories from after the war, the turnover and all the tumult that went on there was very bad. And then my aunt got married in 18 in Germany, or it was Italy at that time, then it became Germany again, or upside down. And she came to live with us. She had a child. His name was Ernest. This was the oldest children. And we lived together. We were brought up by my grandparents. And I remember my grandmother, who died when I was about 4 years old. She died in 1917. And I remember when she was buried.
What was her name?
Hannah. Hannah. As a matter of fact, her maiden name was Hannah Pollak, which was coincidental with my name. Yes.
Why was it that you lived with your grandparents?
My father died when my mother was pregnant with me. She was 3 months pregnant, and he died on typhus. And my mother didn't want to remain with his family, so she moved back to the part of Hungary where her family lived, and that's where we were brought up.
Can you remember any incidents of anti-Semitism?
Never, never. The only anti-Semitism that I remember was I had an uncle living in Budapest, and occasionally my grandfather went to visit them, and every time when he had to go, but that was already from Vienna, he was shaking. He didn't want to go, but he had to go. He couldn't go to the synagogue because he didn't want to use a carriage, and the walking was impossible because he was harassed on the streets because of his beard and his Jewishness. But in Vienna, there was no anti-Semitism at all. We grew up in a democracy, and I belonged to democratic youth groups. It was just, I never heard of anti-Semitism. But as far as I know from my husband, he lived in the suburbs. There was anti-Semitism there, but not in the city.
When your grandfather had the problem because of his appearance,
yes.
When was that?
Well, that was already from Vienna. That must have been already in how old was I? I was about 10 years old, so in 1924, around that time.
Who were the people that harassed him? Do you know?
No, no. We only know from him that he didn't want to go because he couldn't go to his synagogue.
And what was life like for you in Vienna then, going to school?
Well, I went to a parochial school in my first years, and later on I went to a public school. And it was very pleasant, very nice. I enjoyed school. I liked school very much. And then when I was not quite 14, I met my husband ice skating, and we dated. And when I was about 20, we got married.
How was your mother supporting the family at that time?
My mother was a dressmaker. She had it very hard. We were not well-to-do people, and my mother worked as a dressmaker to support us. And my aunt, not the youngest, the middle aunt, who didn't get married, took care of us during the day. She lived with us. And also my grandfather lived with us in Vienna.
How would you describe your Jewish life in Vienna?
I was brought up in a very Orthodox environment, but never a force. Yeah, I was always left to be free the way I wanted to. Then I met my husband, and they were very reformed. And I think I was lazy, and it was so much easier to become reformed, so that's what I became.
When you married, did you move to live with your husband by himself?
Yes.
You had your own apartment?
We had an apartment, yes. We had an apartment close to the store, and that's where my son was born.
When was that?
On May 3rd, 1935.
What's his name?
His name was in German Fritz, but he changed it to Fred. And Hugo is from Kurt's father, the middle name. We gave him the Fred Hugo Pollak.
Your husband's name is what?
Kurt.
And how did Kurt earn a living?
His mother opened a business for him when he was about not quite 18, a sporting goods store. And she had a toy store around the corner, about a half a block from where she opened the other store. And my husband was very good in the business, and he liked it. And then I helped him in the business. Even before we got married, I came to the business, and we took care of it, the two of us.
What did you do for recreation?
We were very active physically, skiing, ice skating, motorcycling, and then we had a group of friends, just like here in the States, where we were closely befriended. We used to meet every week, and that's how we lived.
When did things start to change?
In 1938, March, from the 13th to the 14th at night, it changed. That Hitler marched into Vienna, and it was never to be forgotten, the night when he moved in. The whole city was vibrating, and all the songs of killing and destroying the Jews and taking over the world. And that same night, a Gestapo man came to the apartment, took away the keys to the store, took away the motorcycle, the keys, took all our bank books. We were left penniless and had to report the following day at 8 o'clock in the morning to the store. And that's what we did. At that time, I still had a housekeeper. She still was with us. And then almost every day, my husband was picked up and being taken to some big buildings where soldiers lived to clean. And I never wanted him to go alone because I felt that they were much rougher with men at that time, not so bad with women, that I could protect him to a certain degree. So we were always taken together. And we worked all day. I was in the kitchen cooking and serving the not soldiers, they were all SS people, students, German students, which were with the elite group. And of course exposed to ridicule and and all kind of things, while my husband had to work much harder physically. And then in the evening we had to clean up, and then we were let go. And that went on almost every day for a long, long time. And at that time, it was very frightening. We were very frightened, especially I don't know why. I was so frightened that it sits still in me, the fear of what went on there. And then we decided that my husband, with some friends, will try to go to Belgium and go over the border. In Germany, Aachen was the border, and it was open, the border was open. And I would remain with the child until he can send for me. Well, they changed their rules, the Germans, and they closed the borders. And they were caught on the border, and they couldn't go through anymore. And he sent me a telegram that they want to go to France over the Seine, swim over. And we know in Vienna that it wasn't safe, that they were waiting for them. They shut them down as they tried to swim over. So we had a sporting goods store, and we had very many American students who studied medicine. And as we were young, we were befriended with them a little bit. And I asked one of our friends if he couldn't take me to the American consulate and explain the situation. When Hitler came, immediately we registered for a quota to come to the United States, but it would take at least a year or something like that. So he told me, our friend told me, he will take me to the building, into the building, and he will point out where the American consulate, where the particular gentleman is. And I have to go in by myself because he is not permitted to do that for me. Excuse me. So that's what we did, and I went in, and I was very, very lucky. I had an unusually nice consul. His name was Reinhard. He must have been about 35, 30 years old. And I told him my story that my husband was on the border. He must come back. If he doesn't come back, I will be arrested. He can't, I don't want him to swim to Seine because it's dangerous. And we did register. My cousin sent us an affidavit, and other nice people from the States sent us an affidavit for my son and for me, if he couldn't somehow help us out. And he did. And we got a quota immediately. So my husband came back.
When was this?
That was in July 1938. My husband came back, and we prepared to leave. And we left end of September without telling anybody anything. An organization, my husband remembers the name, I forgot, bought us the tickets, the tickets to the ship tickets to the States, and we were permitted to take out maybe 10 or 20 marks, I don't remember exactly, and one gold piece we sold, which my husband's grandfather gave us, which sew into the teddy bear's ears. So when we come to the States, we have something. And just a luggage, each one a luggage. And my mother-in-law came with us, and she brought us some food that we should have in France. We went to France for 7 days. And from France, we would leave to the States. And my aunts came, whom I never saw again. And then we got on the train, and we left. And we traveled a couple hours, and the child got hungry, and we didn't know what to do. I wanted to give him some. My mother-in-law gave us a goose when she packed it. We should have something when we come to Paris. And we learned a very great lesson on the train ride. We didn't want to touch the goose because we figured we have no money. We come to Paris, we have to eat something. So we said he should wait. But anyway, I went with him to the dining car, and I explained that the child is hungry. They gave me food for him. They wouldn't take any money. And then we came to France, and we unpacked in the hotel, and the goose got green. we couldn't eat it. We had to throw it away. We learned you can't preserve. If God wills it, it's not here, and if He wills it, you will have it. And we learned very much by that. Then we were in Paris, and the agent had an office there, and we had no money, and we didn't know what to do with eating. And it was about 2 days later that we finally got to an organization, and they told us it will take a week to process us. They can't do anything for us, but they gave us meal tickets, and we went to it. How we got to the organization, how we got to the restaurant with the meal tickets, I don't remember anymore. I just know that we got there and we ate. And afterwards, we went to a little park to rest, and we all got sick, very sick from the food. We didn't eat for 2 days anymore. And we went back to the hotel, and we told the agent, we don't know what to do. And people were kind. He took us to Le Havre, where the sailors lived, and they put us up in a tent. And they were exceptionally good to us, especially to our son. They took care of him, and special food was given to him. And after 5 days, on the 1st of October, we boarded for the United States. We boarded the Ile-de-France, and we came on the boat, and we met some acquaintances from Vienna, and we got seasick, very seasick. And on the 7th of October, we arrived in the United States, and my mother's cousin was waiting for us, and then the people, the strange people, their name was Blank, B-L-A-N-C-K. They waited for us too, and were very, very kind to us. Would have taken us to New York, to their home, but we wanted to go with my mother's cousin to Newark, because my cousin Ernie was already waiting for us there. And we got, by a relative of my cousin's, she took us in for a couple of days, and then we went looking for a furnished room, and we took a furnished room, and my cousin and my husband and my son and I, we moved in there. And I got a job through the organizations. I got a job in a furrier store, lining furry coats. And my husband worked in a liquor store, filling liquor bottles. And I took my son every morning to a working women's nursery school. And from there, I walked to my job on Broad Street in Newark. And it was very hard leaving him there. And it was very hard because the nursery school closed at 4 o'clock, while I worked until 6 o'clock, and I was never there before 6:30. So they had to put him on the street, and he sat on the sidewalk and fell asleep. And I picked him up, and I carried him, and that's how we went home.
Were you able to communicate with your relatives still in Vienna?
Not in Vienna anymore. With my friend, I communicated in Vienna, and she told me about my sister. When my brother-in-law, the first night when my brother-in-law was arrested because he was a German citizen, my sister was arrested with him, and we didn't know where she was. And my mother and I had to hire a Nazi lawyer and try to find her, and a lot of abuse. We got a lot of constantly, now you Jews get it, now you can see how we felt when we were not in power, and very much abuse, but we couldn't do anything. We had to find my sister. And we found her, and then she got released. And her husband was, I don't know, they were not in concentration camps. They were only in jails in Vienna. He had to leave, and he had friends in England, so he left for England, and my sister remained in Vienna, and waiting until he will send the papers for her. And that's where the tragic thing came in with the passports. Everybody had to have in the passports a certain stamp which gave them permission to leave the country, but to enter back again. And for some reason, they had the fun with us. That particular stamp was not available anymore. And nobody could get into any place because nobody would let them in. Even if they had passports or anything, the visas they couldn't get anymore. And my brother-in-law from England sent for my sister, and she needed that particular stamp, so there were people around, they falsified it. And she went to the English embassy to get her visa, and that's where they called the Gestapo and arrested her because it was falsified, and she was put in jail again. And I had to leave because our time came to leave, but she was still in jail. And my friend, who is now here in Florida too, she was in contact with me and told me about my sister and so on. After a while, my sister was released again, and she went to England. And from then on, she was safe.
When was it that this arrest took place?
She was arrested in 1938.
About what month, do you know? About what month?
I don't remember the months
Was it
anymore.
before you left?
Before we left, yes, before we left. And then, you know, and then while she was in jail, I had to leave. So in September, she was still in jail. My girlfriend wrote to me, your sister is well again. That means she was out of jail. And she went and lived with my girlfriend until she could go to her husband.
We'll pause now.
Yes.
Today is January 15th, 1996. We're continuing tape 2, the interview of Lily Pollak. We were talking about before you left Vienna,
Yes.
and you were going to tell me what happened to your brother.
My brother was a Hungarian citizen, and he just got married a short while ago. So his wife and he left for Budapest. My mother was married in Vienna, but the second time, and her husband just died maybe 6 months before. He was much older than my mother. So my mother was also alone. And as I was the youngest child, all my life, I felt somehow that I wanted to take on my father's part in her life and protect her. She always was with us. And I didn't know what to do, how I can leave and not know what will happen to my mother. And I begged my cousin, who was my oldest uncle's son, who lived in California and was well-to-do, who also sent an affidavit for Kurt, to please send an affidavit for my mother, not to ask questions or not to say, like he said, she will come later after you settled. There is no time for later. It has to be now because it's too dangerous. And he did send an affidavit, and we also registered my mother with the American embassy. But I sat down one day, I just felt like it, and I wrote a letter to the Hungarian consul. I found out his name, and I wrote a personal letter to him, and I explained to him my life and my mother, that I am so insecure of leaving her, and that she has an affidavit, and please to consider to try to send her back to us, because I don't know how to be without her. And for some reason or another, maybe it did get to him, maybe it didn't, coincidence, I really don't know. But we came in October, and in January we got a notice from from one organization that my mother was on Ellis Island in New York. And her cousin and me went to Ellis Island, and we picked her up. And I cannot describe that day and the way I felt. And she came with us to New Jersey, and we all lived together in our furnished room. You know, we had 2 rooms, and we slept together. And it was wonderful. I cannot tell you. It was a little bit more satisfying that my mother was here, that at least she was safe. And my sister was in England, and my brother had trouble in Hungary because his wife, through her sister, got into Buenos Aires, but she couldn't get her husband in. So he had to hitchhike with boats and all kind of ways. It took him a year and a half to get to his wife to Buenos Aires.
What was his name, your brother? Your brother's name?
Eugene Markovits. And as I just came last week, I was at a wedding of his grandsons, his oldest grandson, who married, and his son was there, and his other grandson, and my niece and my nephew. So it was a very, very wonderful way for me to be with them together.
The affidavit that your cousin from California sent, what did it have to say?
That he sponsors us, and he will be responsible for us. And but we never used it, and we never used any organization to help us, support us, because we had immediately jobs, and we supported ourselves. And not only that we supported ourselves, we saved and we sent money to my aunts who escaped to Belgium, to Antwerp, and they stayed there, and we helped them support themselves. But we were not able to get them affidavits. No, how could we get them affidavits? For parents, for Kurt's parents, we got affidavits. But cousins and aunts were too far removed, and people were not willing to take chances with that. And they perished somehow. We don't know when and where. But when the war broke out, all communication stopped. And then we never heard from them.
Can we back up just one more time? Do you remember when you decided to leave, what that discussion was?
You mean Vienna?
Mm-hmm.
There was no discussion, because my husband came back from Aachen, and we had our affidavits, our visas, and there was no discussion. We were happy. We just didn't want it to be caught. So that's why we locked our apartment, and as we went over there to France, we threw everything, all the keys, everything out into the water. And that's it. We left the apartment as it was. We never went back. We never could go back. We did travel. We went to Italy, went to Switzerland. And when I was in Switzerland, we had to leave after 2 days. They reminded me too much of the Germans. I couldn't take it. And then we went to Israel, where I was very, very happy. And as a matter of fact, in 1960, we wanted to move to Israel, but our son was at that time 18 years old, and he didn't want to come with us. And we didn't have the strength to leave him here, so we remained here.
Can you tell me how your experience in Vienna has affected the rest of your life?
It has affected the children's life, my children's life, because there was always a shadow over, especially over me. Many people overcame it better than I. I couldn't overcome it, the guilt of why I survived. Until this day, I don't know. I don't know why. And I have such a nice life here, such a good life. And I can't enjoy it because so many people had to die, so I should have it. I can't understand it. I question it, but I don't understand it why. So it left me very damaged. And I'm sure that the children felt it too, that I wasn't maybe as a mother as I should have been. I hope that they will forgive me.
Did you have more children when you came to this country?
Yes. My son got very sick. My mother and I opened a dressmaking store. We made dresses to order and alterations, and it was pretty successful. And we rented a store. We lived across the street, and we rented a store. And my husband had a job. He worked at that time in Summit. The people who sent us an affidavit for me, the blanks, had a nephew who owned a factory in Summit, men's factory, and he gave my husband a job there, and he was working there and traveling there, and he was very satisfied. He liked it. He made friends there, and I had the store with my mother. And evenings when my husband came home, we used to go and buy supplies like thread and seam binding, whatever we needed for the store. We took along my son, and we ate out in Newark in a cheap place one day. And that same night we all got sick, but we overcame it. We were older, but my son didn't overcome it. He remained sick. He couldn't tolerate food. He was at that time, we were here at that time, maybe a year, that was in 39, and he couldn't overcome the sickness. And I brought him down to the store every morning and put him in the back on a cot, and that's how I worked. And after a while, my mother and I noticed that he didn't urinate anymore. And we had a friend who also was a Viennese woman. She was a medical doctor, Dr. Ober, I forgot her name. And I told her about it, and she said, let's put him in the hospital. And we put him in the Beth Israel hospital, and he was on a ward there, so I could only visit him twice a week. So when I had a chance to visit him, he looked so pale and he looked so sick. And I said to the doctor, I said, what is the matter with him? Does he urinate? So they all laughed. He said, sure, he urinates and everything. I said, I don't believe it. There's something wrong with the kid. So she said, I'm going to satisfy you. And she told the nurses to put a chart on how much his intake is and how much his output is to see if he does urinate. And I just remember we didn't have a telephone in our apartment. I was very restless one night, and I went down to the tavern, and I called the hospital, how he was. I just couldn't sleep, and they told me, come in, he's very sick. So my husband and I went in, and we know he must be very, very sick if they called us in at night. He had, from the food, he had a urine poisoning, and that was very rare. They never had anything like that. At least that's what I was told. And they had to clean his blood completely. He was very, very sick. I cannot tell you how sick the child was. And he survived.
And what is he now?
He is now 60 years old. He's a physicist in New York. He is a very, very bright man and a very good person.
And does he have children?
He has one son, David, who is 31 years old.
And how about other children? Do you have another son?
Yes, I have a younger son. When I wanted to come to that when he was so sick. A couple years later, we said it's really not right. He should have a brother. He shouldn't be left all alone in the world. There were no cousins. There were nobody, only us. My sister-in-law, Kurt's sister, never had children. My sister didn't have children. So we had George, who was born 7.5 years later. And he's now 53. And I'm glad I had him. He gave me two wonderful girls.